welcome everybody to this briefing. This is a joint situational statement on the Ekiti State Off-Cycle Governorship election issued by the European Union Support to Democratic Governance in Nigeria, Eu-Sdgn Election Observation Hall, and delivered at this AB Event Center at Ekiti, Saturday, 20th June 2026. Introduction. The Ekiti State Off-Cycle Governorship election is taking place today, Saturday, June 20, 2026. The Eu-Sdgn Election Observation Hall, comprising the Kuka Center, South Africa, Nigeria Women Trust Fund, Yaga Africa, International Press Center, and Center for Media and Society, supported by the European Union Support for Democratic Governance project, jointly deployed 598 observers to various polling units across the 16 local government areas of Ekiti State for this governorship election. Each organization in the org is using a triangulated election observation methodology combining systematic, statistical, and technology-driven tools to observe specific thematic areas and provide a comprehensive assessment of the election. These include election integrity, election security, disability inclusion, gender participation, peace building, misinformation tracking, media safety, and results verification. The report covers our observation on the adequacy of personnel and materials, the opening of polls, functionality and performance of beavers, machine for accreditation, voter turnout and participation with particular attention to women, persons with disabilities and vulnerable groups, security situation, electoral offenses, malpractices and irregularities focusing on vote buying, intimidation, disinformation, and access and safety of observers and journalists. This statement should be read alongside our pre-election assessment report issued on May 25, 2026, and the pre-election statement issued yesterday, that is June 19, 2026. It presents our preliminary assessment of the election as of 12 noon, based on reports received from our stationary and roving observers across the state. The statement does not constitute a final assessment of the election and will be followed by a post-election report by the time voting, collation, and announcement of results are concluded. Presence of election officials, condition of election materials, and timeliness of opening. Based on reports from our observers, polling officials were present and election materials, sensitive and non-sensitive, were complete. An adequate number of beavers, voting cubicle, register of voters, official stamp and ink pad in observed locations. Reports from 246 of the 250 sampled polling units indicated early arrival of polling officials and materials, with the presence of INEC officials at 75% of polling units across the state by 7:30 a.m. Voting also commenced on time, with 69% of polling units commencing accreditation and voting by 8:30 a.m. The functionality of the beavers machine was also optimal, with 96% level of performance in the observed polling units. However, there are identified inconsistencies in the number of parties and candidates on the ballot papers and result sheets. For example, while INEC's final list of candidates contains 14 names, the Form EC8A polling unit result sheets provide spaces for 15 political parties, and there are 19 political parties on the ballot papers. Participation of women, persons with disabilities, and vulnerable groups. Reports received from our observers indicate that the voting process was largely inclusive for women and persons with disabilities. The situation reports from about 100 observers deployed to 88 polling units by the Gender and Election Watch of the Nigeria Women Trust Fund indicates that the participation of women, who constitute 51% of the voting population, is relatively high despite some minor operational challenges. It's noted that women are playing significant roles as polling officials, agents, and voters, with 158, that is 58%, as polling unit officials, 87 as party agents, with the visible presence of women on the voting queue. 2 minor incidents were recorded in polling unit 6, Ward 11 in Ifaki, Ido-Osi local government area, where a nursing mother was initially denied priority voting, and as well as in Iriwa Ward, is the Onu local government area, and Ikere local government area, where the beavers had some difficulty in capturing the biometrics of elderly voters. There were reports that significant participation of persons with disabilities in the election, with no significant incidents of harassment. Accessibility measures were visible, with 89.9% of polling units physically accessible, 80.6% observance of priority voting, and 71.4% provision of assistive voting devices in the observed polling units. However, accessibility challenges were observed in some polling units, such as in parts of Ekiti. The details are in the statement. Security situation. The overall security situation is largely peaceful, with the deployment of 5 to 10 security personnel to each of the 2,442 polling units across the state. Voting is proceeding in most of these observed locations without any significant disruption, large-scale violence, or major operational failure. However, the credibility and integrity of the election is threatened by isolated cases of violence and well-organized voter inducement and vote-buying schemes. So far, there are 24 reported incidents of violence across 10 local government areas of Irekodun, Ifelodun, Ado-Ekiti, Imure, Ido-Osi, Ilejemeje, Ijero, Ise-Orun, Gbonyin, Ikole, and Oye. Electoral offenses and irregularities. Reports of vote buying and voter intimidation were received from across 9 local government areas, where 24 incidents were recorded, with specific cases mainly in Irekodun, Ifelodun, and Ado-Ekiti local government areas, to compromise the secrecy of the ballots. Access for observers and media. The election environment was generally conducive for journalists, with confirmed reports of unimpeded access to polling units. There were also significant efforts to combat and debunk false narratives relating to alleged INEC administrative actions, candidate endorsements and withdrawals, party defections, voter inducement claims, and purported incidents of electoral violence. The correct information were amplified on mainstream media and social media platforms. However, in some locations in Ikere, Ekiti, and parts of Southwest, Ekiti West and Ikole, security personnel restricted the access and movement of journalists, while in Ikere Ekiti, party agents and security agents allegedly obstructed journalists from performing their duties. Here are recommendations, preliminary recommendations. To INEC, fix any malfunctioning beavers or deploy a replacement beavers to polling units experiencing technical beavers functionality. 2. Ensure extended voting hours are granted to polling units that opened late or with the beavers malfunction to prevent disenfranchisement. 3. Allow voters on the queue by the official close of polls to vote with due cognizance of priority voting for vulnerable groups. 4. Ensure strict compliance of polling unit presiding officers with Section 39 and 40 of the INEC regulations and guidelines for the conduct of elections 2026 on closing of voting procedures and electronic transmission of results. We're also calling on INEC to ensure immediate pasting of Form EC60E at the polling unit and the instantaneous and real-time uploading of validated polling unit results to the INEC Result Viewing Portal, IREV, as soon as counting and recording of votes is concluded. To security agencies, we urge them first to maintain professionalism and absolute neutrality in the electoral process in compliance with the Code of Conduct and Rules of Engagement for security personnel on election duties. 2. They should intensify vigilance around the polling units to arrest those engaging in vote buying and voter intimidation. 3. The security agents should accompany polling unit presiding officers to the designated collation centers to ensure the sanctity and safety of the sensitive election materials. And finally, for the security agencies, they should reinforce security at the designated collation centers to prevent disruptions and breakdown of law and order. Our recommendation to political parties and candidates: 1. They should desist from weaponizing poverty through voter inducement and vote buying. 2. They should restrain their party agents from unruly conduct and behavior at the polling units and collation centers. 3. They should admonish their supporters to remain law-abiding and refrain from acts of thuggery and violence. And 5. For the political parties and candidates, they should respect the choice of the Ekiti people. To voters, our recommendation: those that are here to vote should go to the polling units and exercise their franchise. They should reject financial inducement and vote freely without coercion or intimidation. And they should protect the secrecy of their ballots. To the media and election observers, we urge: 1. That you verify all information before publication to avoid reporting fake news misinformation, and disinformation. 2, we recommend that you await the official announcement and declaration of results by INEC at every level of collation before publishing or broadcasting election results. 3, we urge that you should continue to monitor the result collation and declaration process and provide the public with a comprehensive and accurate picture of the process. Finally, for media and election observers, we urge that and we recommend that you report any threat or denial of access to election collation centers. Closing note. This is a preliminary time-bound assessment based on information available as of 2 p.m. today. The EU-Sdgn Election Observation Hall will continue to monitor the remainder of the voting process, the collation and announcement of results, and will issue a further statement at the end of the election. I thank you very much for your attention.